what I came to understand was that the so-called black leaders and had gotten together without bothering to talk to me or my mother or my family member, and you see those things like this, say subtle settlement 1989 priority. They never talked to us about that. They went through a whole series of weekly stuff that they were talking about. My father never asked us, never talked to my mother, never talked to us about any kind of settlement. And so here it is now, 28 years, my father's dead, beaten to death, homicide, they called it, and they haven't done anything about that. And I think that's ridiculous. I mean, it's kind of like my whole life, you know, just fighting. And I mean, it comes a time when you kind of get kind of tired of that. And so, needless to say, they became part of the structure of the racism and oppression that we have to fight against. And sometimes people don't know that, but they are. Now, in other words, if you're not fighting to change it, you're part of it. That's the way I see it. In 1998, Farrah Winfrey, who's with the Caucasians United for Reparations and Emancipation, that's a white-led group. She lives in Kingston, Tennessee, who had gotten with some people of the Muslim faith and filed a petition with the United Nations. There was the United Nations Human Rights Commission at that time, the Commission for Social and Economic Justice at that time. There's no longer a Human Rights Commission with the United Nations. That's in 2006, the Human Rights Commission became the United Nations Human Rights Council. So anyway, she got some documentation from me and other people across the country about police brutality, and the Suttles case was sent to the Human Rights Subcommittee of the United Nations. And the Human Rights Council, though, what it does is it encourages victims and family members of police brutality and other kinds of human rights violations to do your own writing and to file complaints with the United Nations. So that's what we did in 2009. We got with an NGO, non-governmental organization, and filed a complaint about the Wadey Suttles case, also about 2 other cases here in the city of Chattanooga about police brutality that's never been addressed, and racialized politics that's never been addressed here in this city. But it's been almost, like I said, 28 years, and I'm kind of tired about that, of having to justify his life or my life and everybody else's life. Nobody's been, there's been no restitution, nobody's been held accountable, the people just kept stepping like it was nothing. I'm pretty sure somebody got paid. I don't doubt that at all, but it hadn't been me. It hadn't been my family. And we're still stuck here, going through this mess. And like I said, there's never been a criminal investigation into this case, and as it can be seen by the official documents that I brought, the FBI investigation was conducted to verify internal FOIA's report about this death. So the investigation conducted by the FBI was not an independent investigation, and even after the FBI finished their investigation, they turned their findings back over to Tom Kennedy. And Tom Kennedy, people need to know whether he was commissioner of fire police or not, he was an elected official. And because we filed a voting rights lawsuit, part of what we filed a voting rights lawsuit, and part of what they found in that voting rights lawsuit was that the black community had been denied equal protection under the law, part of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And I would say that Wadey Suttles is one of those people who've been denied equal protection under the law. After all, he was in their custody. He was still in their custody at that time. And besides that, Tom Kennedy was part of the ruling class, the administrative ruling class, who was being sued by the Suttles family at that time. It's ridiculous, this kind of investigation that went on. And I'm saying that these institutions in the city of Chattanooga, the Internal Affairs Division, the FBI, and the Chattanooga City Commission finagled this case so much that neither of them can say that they acted with integrity. And I'll say that to them and anybody else who want to hear it. So, like I said, the posters on the wall were meant to show the contradictory statements by the FBI and the City Attorney's Office. and you can look at them themselves. There's Mike Williams and Melvin Carson's statement, which was taken by the Internal Affairs Division and passed off as some sort of FBI investigation, an FBI report. The FBI never even talked to Melvin Carson and Mike Williams. They were the only two that people witnessed actually hitting my father with a slapstick and kicking him and stomping him and dragging him. So, like it's under the Voting Rights Act, we did file a Brown versus Board of Commissioners. But there were other lawsuits which was intended to show the people in the city of Chattanooga that this was a movement and not just a lawsuit. You know, it's not just so some people can get elected and sit there and not do anything for us, keep us in this constant state of oppression that we've been on. And it seems like the oppression doesn't change whether you're a black politician or a white politician. So, I mean, we need to get that out of our heads. It's not going to change until we change it, you know. So, the lawsuits that we filed were Suttles versus the City of Chattanooga, Brown versus Board of Commissioners, Cousin versus Sonquist, which was another voting rights lawsuit that was filed to change the way the judges in the state of Tennessee were elected. And the way they were elected was another way of violating the voting rights law, Voting Rights Act. And we filed Suttles 2 versus City of Chattanooga, which was filed under the Racketeering, Influence, Corrupt Organizations Act. So I just went over my father's case and going through the process of how we went about changing the form of government, but Ray's gonna get back deeper into that. So here it is.
As terrible as what Maxine has been telling you about what happened to her father, how do you turn it on?
I'm sorry.
It's got to hold it closer to your mouth, I think.
How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. But as terrible as what happened to Maxine's father, it's important to remember this was not an isolated case. The 28-year nightmare that Maxine has experienced has been shared by numerous other people in the Chattanooga area. In fact, all of the victims that have been killed, the overwhelming majority have been young black men, but all of them were not young black men. There's been women also, and there's also been whites. The youngest victim was 16, and the oldest one was 85. So nobody is really exempt from this. In fact, the U.S. Justice Department recently released figures showing that per capita, there are more people killed by police in Chattanooga than anywhere else in the country. And it is, based on these figures, that a statement has been made that in Chattanooga, you're far more likely to be killed by a police officer than you are by a criminal. And that's just a fact of life in Chattanooga. And the police are trained in the local police academy. Maxine mentioned a person that was heavily personally involved in her father's death named Mike Williams. That is the man who has been running the police academy for the past 15 years. And what do you think he teaches the new policemen to do? Same things he did. If you look at the people that have been killed and the names of the police that killed them, you find the same names coming up over and over again. There's a man named Marty Penny. He killed a friend of mine in Saudi in the early 70s. He killed 2 more people before getting transferred to Chattanooga. In Chattanooga, he was promoted, and he was having a young police cadet, a young guy wanting to be a policeman, ride with him. And they responded to a call of a suspected car theft. It was really a 17-year-old boy driving his mother's car. They went there, they put him in handcuffs and chained him and manually strangled him to death, just like they did Larry Powell. And this young man went on to become a police officer himself. His first day out as a police officer, he killed a man himself. And this repeats over and over again. There was one instance where 5 of them shot a person so many times they had to reload their pistols 3 times while they were killing him. Now, if it's not possible to kill a person with 1 shot, I mean, they don't need to be a police officer. But these, you know, shot him 50-something times. One of the same individuals the very next year was involved in another shooting where they shot a person 40 times. And this is a pattern that just keeps repeating itself. And it's inevitable that more people are going to be killed by the police in Chattanooga. I can say that without a shadow of doubt. I can't say who it will be, but it could be anybody. It could be you, it could be me. But that's just life in Chattanooga. You're under a very corrupt system here, and the police are the enforcers of that system.
Oh, Ray, would you talk about the research on the change in government and how the oppressive conditions that black folk had to live under came about, and why it took on a different complexion in Chattanooga?
Chattanooga was different from most any other place because during the American Civil War, Chattanooga was the only place that was captured by the Federal Army and never given up. In August of 1863, Colonel John T. Wilder put his cannons on Stranger's Ridge and shelled Chattanooga. 7 years later, he was mayor of Chattanooga. Wilder was an iron manufacturer. He made iron in Indiana before the war. And when he was down here, he saw iron ore, he saw coal mines, and he said, "We've captured this place, let's get rich off of it." So organized a consortium of 73 people from the Army of the Cumberland, that was his unit, and they stayed here after the war and they took over. While the war was going on, he became a quartermaster and he organized building activities. They built the first bridge over the river, they built the waterworks, they built the foundries, they built a rolling mill, they built miles of roads and railroads and stuff. After the war, this stuff got sold as Army surplus. Guess who bought it? Wilder and his men bought it themselves. General Grant complained to Congress that the government was being defrauded out of millions of dollars, but Wilder had friends in Washington, so nothing happened about it. And for the rest of his life, Wilder ran Tennessee, well, basically the entire region. He was who dominated the iron industry here.